Hello and welcome to ScrapbookPal's YouTube channel. I'm Jill of Jill Cameron Creations, and here's our project. I've already created one card and we're going to be making the purple and blue cards. Products by Honeybee Stamps, the Lovely Layers Sunflower Set, Thanks Buzzwords Stamps, and dies. Products that we're going to be using, as I said, we're going to be using the Lovely Layers Sunflower Set, the Buzzword Thanks Stamp Set, and then also the Buzzword die set that coordinates. I have some green, brown, gold glitter, and various layers of purple and blue cardstock. I will be using Distress Oxide inks, including that new Villainous Potion. I love that ink. Purple's my favorite color, so absolutely gorgeous ink. And then some blues. I'm going to be using domed blenders to ink blend. And then we're going to have 3 different Copic markers for our leaves. We're going to be using G29, YG63, and YG61. The first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and get all of my die cutting done. I need 8 leaves for all of my cards, and I need 4 centers. So I have the dark brown for the background, and that gold cardstock there on the right is going to be the outline, that circle outline that goes around the center. And if you notice, I'm placing all of my dies really close together so I get the most available space to use for my die cuts. And I'm just using some washi tape to hold my dies in place. I have tons of washi tape, so I just use that to hold my everything in place. If you have some washi tape that's like really super sticky, just tack your fingers on the back of it and it will get rid of some of that tack and it won't rip your paper. I'm going to do the exact same thing for all of my layers here. I'm going to do the back layer in my darkest color, the middle layer in my mid-tone color, and then that top layer is going to be in my lightest cardstock color. And this is for the flower itself. For all of my flower die cuts, I'm placing these dies in the topmost corner, and I'm kind of positioning the dies in the manner in which they are going to layer together. That way when I do my second cut, I can place the dies very similarly and I can get another flower even if the corner is cut off of it. The placement of this second flower is going to be in the top corner of my card so that I can actually get 2 flowers out of 1 panel of cardstock, and I'm going to be trimming off some of this flower petal anyway. The orientation of this die is pretty easy to align. 3 petals, not panels. There are 3 petals that are grouped together there, as you can see. And then there is a little notch that's kind of in the bottom left corner of the flower if you're holding it with those 3 petals at the top. And that makes it very easy to align in the center. Now I wanted to add a little bit more dimension to these flowers, so I'm going to actually add this ink. And I am just taking my ink blender, dabbing it in my ink, and then pouncing it over those leaf petals on the ends, and I'm kind of making sure that the very end edge of the cardstock has more ink on it instead of the center of it, because I want the edges of those petals to really stand out. Once these are stacked together, it gives the flower more dimension. I'm also going to be bending up the petals on the top 2 layers to give it that big oomph, and it's absolutely gorgeous. As I finish inking these petals on the flowers, I talked about a moment ago how easy it is to align these petals. I'm going to show you here in just a second. There is a little notch to align the top layer of the petals. The bottom 2 layers are super easy because those 3 petals are together and you can really align them. But there's that notch, and I just pointed to it just a second ago, and that's what I'm going to use to align my top layer of petals. It's really easy, and then I can actually fluff up all of my petals and I can put the centers in and have this gorgeous flower. So the center parts of the flowers have that same notch, and the ridging around the edges are the same as the middle part of the flowers themselves. Super easy to align. Now you can offset this if you want to. Just keep in mind that the center of these flowers are oval in shape, so they're not going to be perfectly aligned around the center unless you're aligning up that oval there. Completed flower, easy to put together, absolutely gorgeous. I'm going to go ahead and do the blue flower as well, and I'm going to ink those edge petals with chipped sapphire Distress Oxide ink. And then I'm going to put those two flowers together exactly the same that we did for the purple one. Flowers together. Now we're going to go ahead and dress up our leaves a little bit. I didn't want to just ink blend these because they're going to be laying flat on our panel. I wanted to actually give them a little bit more dimension. So I'm taking a G29 Copic marker and I am literally just drawing in very lightly in the areas that are embossed on the leaf. Now, like this, it looks a little harsh. So I'm actually taking two more markers, a YG63 and a YG61, to soften this color out. You can see what the finished leaf looks like above. When you're using Copic markers on colored paper, any color cardstock, it's not going to show up very much unless it's a super dark color on a super light color, and it is probably going to bleed a lot. So I'm not doing this to actually draw anything or color anything in. I'm using these markers to add a little bit of a different color and then softening that color out, really fading it back a little bit, but still giving those lines in that leaf a little bit more detail so they stand out, because our flowers have so much beauty and detail to them. These gorgeous petals and leaves need to have a beautiful background, so we're going to create two ink blended backgrounds, and I'm doing this from a top corner down to a bottom corner. And I'm ink blending on a diagonal, and I'll go back and forth between my colors to blend them out. For the blue background, I'm using Chipped Sapphire, Stormy Sky, and Tumbled Glass. And I'm using domed blenders for this. For my Distress Oxide inks, it's my preferred blending tool. I just really like how domed blenders blend onto cardstock with the Distress Oxide inks. I don't have any marks, they blend really smooth, and I just absolutely love them. When I'm ink blending, I also like to have a piece of paper or a sticky note under my fingers so that I don't have inky fingerprints on my panel or leave oils from my fingers, so that the ink actually sticks to my entire cardstock panel. I'm blending on Nina Solar White 80-pound cardstock, and I'm going to blend this out a couple of ways here just in between my colors to get rid of those harsh lines. I also am going to do this for my purple background, as I did with my orange yellow background with the card I showed you at the beginning. We're going to do our purple background now, and I'm using Villainous Potion, Dusty Concord, and Milled Lavender from my Distress Oxide ink colors. I just re-inked my Dusty Concord, so it's a super inky ink pad, and I actually almost got too much ink on my blending tool because it was really heavy in that corner over there. But the good thing about Distress Oxide ink is that it blends out super easy. So I'm just going to go back and forth here, and I did this in about thirds. I didn't really worry about it being more in one place or the other. I just wanted to make sure that I had really good ink coverage, because we're going to do a really quick water splatter on this just to break it up a tiny bit at the end. Here are two finished panels, and I'm just taking the sprayer out of a distress sprayer and tapping it to get my water sprinkles. I did not dab it off, I just let it dry. We're going to go ahead and make our sentiments now. I'm using the Villainous Potion for the little sentiment that's going to go under our die cut sentiment, and then I'm also going to stamp that in the dark chipped sapphire blue color for our blue card. The main thank you, the big thank you, I'm going to stamp and die cut that in the same colors. If you have a large sentiment stamp or any large stamp and it doesn't seem to want to accept the ink that you're putting on it, clean it with your stamp cleaner really well, and then put Versamark ink on it and stamp it off, and then ink your stamp. It's going to give the ink a little something to cling to until you dirty up your stamps a little bit, because that ink needs something to stick to. Now we're going to go ahead and trim down, and I'm sorry the bottom part of this wasn't caught, but I just trimmed down that sentiment strip for everything for both of those and just trimmed those out. Now I'm going to use the coordinating die of Thanks, and I'm going to cut both of these out. And it is time to put our cards together. Real quick, the thanks, the big thanks, I did cut out a second layer of just plain white cardstock to put behind the thanks to give it just a little bit more sturdiness. We're going to arrange our cards. I first just dry fitting all of our elements on here. I am going to leave the flowers in place and slip the leaves in behind them so that I know where my leaves need to be placed. These are really, really simple to hold down and hold in place and that kind of thing, and not really move them around a whole lot. And go ahead, and I'm just putting glue in the center here. And I like to put my glue in a needle tip bottle that has a little cap on it, so I can get these fine lines. It is Nuvo Deluxe adhesive, so I can get those fine lines in there without my bottle clogging or anything like that. And the glue comes out really easy, so no problem. And I'm going to do the exact same thing on our blue. And then we're going to place our big thanks sentiment. We're going to use some foam tape. And then we're going to glue the little sub sentiment that goes under it. We're going to glue that directly to our panel. I have finished assembling the cards here, and I went ahead and adhered them to our card bases. They are side folding note cards. And I'm just figuring out right here where I need to put my foam tape behind the big thanks die cut sentiment. It is hanging off of the flower, and it's high enough that I need 2 layers of foam tape on that very end of the S there. So I'm just cutting some different pieces of foam tape and adding them in various places and taking off the backing here so that I can put this on my card front without being too bulky. So the S has 2 layers of foam tape behind it. The top of the H has 1 little piece behind it, and then the bottom of the T has 1 little piece behind it to pop it up off of the flower. And I'm going to do the exact same thing for the thanks over on our purple card. And then you can either leave it just like this and have the flower hanging over, or you can trim it off at the top and at the side. That's entirely up to you. Joining me today at ScrapbookPal YouTube channel, we used the Honeybee Stamps Lovely Layers Sunflower and the Thanks Buzzwords stamps and die sets. Don't forget to subscribe. I have pictures here at the end for you to check out all of the finished cards. Again, thanks for joining us. Have a great day.